Hi, my name is T.C. Mack, and I'm a graduate student at Bryn Mawr College and an intern here at the Drexel University Counseling Center. Today we're going to talk about test anxiety, what it is, and some ways to work through that anxiety. Test anxiety is the anxiety either before or during the test that affects performance on the test. So we can break this down into two parts. The before part, or the anticipatory part, when we begin thinking about or trying to study for the test, and the during, or the situational part, that we feel, this may occur when we blank out during the test and then sort of the wheels fall off and we can't get back on track. So what can we do to help get through both the anticipatory part and the situational part? So let's talk about anticipatory strategies first. So the first thing that you can do is to develop good study habits. So the first thing that this involves is really giving yourself enough time to study for the test. So if you're studying for a midterm or a final, there's a lot of information that you have to digest and master. So that may mean starting to study for the test either a week or maybe even 2 weeks beforehand. But either way, you need to give yourself enough time to really master that information. So this means getting repeated exposures to the information, sitting down maybe once or even twice a day to really go through the material. And what this does in turn is that it gives you confidence really when you get to the test and you can think, I've seen this information so many times, I really know it well. So you don't get to the test, because a lot of times what happens is college students will cram for tests either the night or 2 nights before, and then they get to the test and they realize, well, I don't really know this information all that well. The third thing that you can do to develop good study habits is to really find a time and a place that works for you. Some people can study in noisy environments, whereas other people just need it to be completely quiet. But either way, you just need to find something that works for you. The other thing is the time of day. And this is important because some people really work well in the morning or in the afternoon, whereas other people work well at night. I will caution, though, that if you decide that you're sort of a night owl, not to try to study really late the night before a test, especially if that test is in the morning. Getting a good night's sleep is one way to prevent anxiety from happening the day of the test. And then the last thing you can do to develop good study habits is to study in chunks. So this means really taking a 30 or a 50-minute time block and just concentrating on that information for that period of time. This maybe means shutting off your cell phone or turning off your computer so you're not distracted. But what you really want to do is just focus on that information and not be distracted by the things that are going on or may go on around you. So the next thing that you can do is to develop good organizational strategies. And just like taking the time or taking enough time to study for a test, one thing you can do is really sort of look ahead at your schedule. So this means getting at your planner or looking at the calendar on your computer and just going through and prioritizing. So if you have a test on Friday, knowing that you have that test on Friday and knowing that you need to study all throughout the week to do well on that test. Another organizational strategy that you can use is to break things down into smaller parts. So if you're studying for a midterm or a final and oh my gosh, I have 8 chapters to study for, break that down. Study, take 1 or 2 chapters each night and really concentrate on those chapters. Don't worry about the rest of the information. A lot of times what happens is you see all of that information and you think to yourself, there's no way that I'm going to be able to master all of this information. And if that's true, you can't master all of that information in one night, but if you break it down into chunks, then that may prevent you from procrastinating, because when you say to yourself, I can't do this, then maybe you check your email, or you call a friend, or you turn on the TV, and those are strategies that are just not productive to really get mastering that information and getting it down so that you're confident with it. The last anticipatory sort of section or strategies that you can use is really thought strategies. So this involves things like just focusing your thinking in the moment. So this is similar to what we just talked about. So you take a chapter and you say to yourself, I'm only going to try to really get down this information in the next 50 minutes. I'm not going to worry about the chapters that I'm not studying. I'm not going to worry about all the other homework that I might have to do. I'm just going to focus my attention really on this particular thing or this particular concept. And once you shut out or try to shut out everything else, that will really allow you to relax and just focus on that material. The second thing you can do is to think positive thoughts, but don't make them unrealistic. So to think positive thoughts, you can think about how much studying you've already done, or that you've already read the chapters, whereas other students may not have. Just think about the positive things instead of dwelling on all the negative things. Like, if I don't if I don't cover these 3 chapters tonight, then I'm not going to pass this test, and if I don't pass this test, then this class is going to be a disaster. Those strategies are not productive. But thinking, that you can do it and that you've already have a good grasp on a lot of the information can help you to study the information that you might be struggling with. The last thing that you can do is to do a guided imagery activity, and this just involves you imagining yourself in the testing situation, relaxing in that situation, and really being able to recall the answers well. There's lots of different guided imagery activities on the internet. We'll provide you one that you can click on after you watch this video, but don't feel restricted. So that wraps up our discussion of anticipatory strategies that you could use. This may involve developing good study habits, like finding a time and a place that you can go to really get your studying done, making sure that you give yourself enough time to study. It also may involve looking ahead at your schedule and prioritizing, and then doing things like thinking positive thoughts, going through guided imagery activities, and really just breaking things down into manageable parts. So now let's talk about some situational strategies, or things that you can do the night before the test, the morning of the test, and then when you get to the test, and finally during the test. So what are things that you can do before the test? Well, the first thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is to just get a good night's sleep. Oftentimes when people don't get enough sleep, they're more prone to anxious feelings. So this means you may have lots of thoughts running through your head, or you're not able to pick out the thoughts that you really want to use to do well on the test. Another good strategy is to eat something before the test. This doesn't mean that you have to go out and have a huge meal. It just means grabbing a granola bar or a piece of fruit, something to give your body some energy during the test. It does not mean, however, getting a huge cup of coffee on an empty stomach or chowing down on really sugary foods, because these foods can mimic anxiety symptoms or exacerbate your anxiety symptoms. So you want to stay away from those things. But do remember just to eat something, a healthy snack before the test. And then finally, one thing you can do before the test or right before the test is not to get there too early or too late. If you get there too early, this gives you too much time to think about sort of doomsday scenarios or concentrate on negative aspects regarding the test. If you get there too late, you may begin to panic, and if you have the panic symptoms, which are very much like the anxiety symptoms, it's going to be difficult for you to recall the information that you need to in order to perform well on the test. So what to do when you get to the exam? Well, the first thing you need to do is to find a comfortable place in the room. This may be a place that you always sit, like during class, that you're just comfortable with, but make sure that you have a nice writing surface and that you're not going to be distracted by the people around you. Another thing you can do is just to engage in some deep breathing or some guided imagery. What the breathing allows you to do, just by taking some deep breaths for a couple minutes, is that it really just slows down your heart rate. It'll hopefully slow down your mind as well, because you can't have a racing heart and take slower, deep breaths at the same time. The other thing you can do is just notice any maybe muscle tension that you have. A lot of us, when we get nervous or anxious, will clench our teeth, or we'll strain our shoulders, or make a fist. And sometimes we do this and we don't even realize we're doing it. So maybe just notice the parts of your body that are tense and really just let that anxiety go. Just let it out and relax, and this will help you to relax before taking the exam. The last thing you can do, which we also talked about, was just some positive self-talk. Just telling yourself, look, I've anticipated this test, I've prepared for this test, whatever happens, whatever questions are on there are going to be on there, and I've done the best job that I can to prepare for this exam. And just giving yourself that, allowing yourself to have that confidence that you've done everything that you can to prepare for the exam. So during the test, what can you do during the test? The first thing that I think is always important is just to read directions carefully. Oftentimes when we're anxious, we may glaze over things that are important. So just give yourself the chance to read the directions a couple of times and really make sure you understand what the question is asking. Another thing you can do is really just to budget your time well. A lot of times professors are nice enough to give you the format before the exam so you know how many questions are going to be on the exam and what form they're going to be in. So just look up at the clock, 2 or 3 times in the allotted time. Just make sure that you're sort of on track and make sure that you've given yourself not only enough time to answer all the questions that are on the exam, but then also giving yourself enough time to just check over your work. And that leads me into another important point, which is if you get to a question you don't know, just go ahead and skip that question and come back. And I know a lot of you know this strategy, but what you may also want to do is just circle that question. And then by giving yourself that extra 3 to 5 minutes at the end, you can not only check over your answers to make sure that you've answered all the questions in the way that you want to, but then also taking a little bit more time to address those questions that you might have had a little bit of difficulty with and make sure that you're really satisfied with your answer. And the final thing would be just when you see other people hand in their tests, don't panic. The test situation is not a race. You need to take the time that you're comfortable with to answer the questions on the exam to the best of your ability and to really be confident in what you've done and the work that you've done on that test. So if other people started handing in the exam, just focus your attention back on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and don't worry about what they're doing. And then finally, after the test is over, I think this is a good time to really just go back to your dorm room or to the library or wherever and just reflect a little bit about what worked well or what didn't work well in the time before the test and during the test. Also notice that everybody experiences anxiety. And you probably experienced some anxiety during the test, but you'll also probably notice that at some point in time it went away when you refocused yourself back on the test. So just know that even if you experience that anxiety, you can work through it. So now that I've given you the strategies, let's just review one more time what test anxiety is and how to get through it. So test anxiety is anxiety that we either feel before or during the test that affects our test performance. Anticipatory strategies that we can use are to develop good study habits, to develop good organizational strategies, and to create some positive self-talk. Some situational strategies that we can use are to get a good night's sleep, to eat something before the exam, and to make sure that we don't arrive too late or too early for the exam. Some things that we can do during the exam are to read the directions carefully, to come back to questions that we are having difficulty with, and to really just take some deep breaths and relax when we feel those anxious feelings coming on. Then the last thing to do is just make sure that you check in with yourself and review what has worked and what hasn't worked so that you can use it for the next time. So thanks for watching the video today, and make sure that you check out the other videos from the Drexel University Counseling Center. Thanks.